Hello everyone and welcome to another Airbrush Asylum video. This is part 3 of the three-headed dragon tutorial, so thanks for joining us. If you haven't already, feel free to check out parts 1 and 2 so that you know exactly how I got up to this particular stage in the artwork. So what I'm doing here is I am cutting out strips of this transparent blue vinyl. This is the brand is Metamark, so it's really good to cut and spray through. Doesn't leave a huge edge. The only drawback with this particular one that I've found is that if you leave it on, say overnight, it will leave glue residue. So just be wary of that if you are going to use this one. I strongly recommend the light grey vinyl instead by Hexus. It's just a spray mask vinyl. That one does not leave glue and still has all the same properties as this particular blue Metamark vinyl. Why am I using this one then, you may ask? I've just got a heap of it left over, so I didn't want it to go to waste, so I'm using it up. It does work well, just make sure you do not leave it overnight. Alright, so enough of the description of the vinyl. I'm just cutting out sections of the dragon's tongues. You'll notice that I'm keeping the teeth masked up as a positive. I'm going to go ahead soon and spray the tongues so that we can get some color on them, and then I'll continue to render the different parts of the dragons. So now that I've exposed the areas of the tongues that I want to spray, I'm using pink, so white mixed with a few drops of red and violet. This is all Trident water-based airbrush colors. So if you're using a different brand, by all means, you can still follow all these steps. Just mix it up to your liking. So I add a little bit of violet just to tint it and make the pink a little bit dirtier, as I really didn't want the base color of the tongue to be too bright. So now that I've sprayed that on there, I'm now using red violet and I'm just shading the lower section of the tongue. So just to give it a bit more shape and depth. I also use just a regular red, like add a bit of transparent base into it just to add another shadow tone before this particular red violet. So you'll notice that that had already been done. Sorry I missed that step within the video, so I've just thought I'd better explain that to you so you know what's going on. Okay, so now that all of the tongues have been rendered, you'll notice previously I was using a bit of texturing techniques as well. I'm switching to white, and this is just a thinned out Trident white. And what I'm doing is just picking out some of my highlights on the tongue. I'm also creating some sort of stippling pattern just to create the wet spots on the tongue so that they're not just basic and flat. So remember, always build your texture as you go. Okay, so now that I've finished with adding the highlights to the tongues, I'm mixing up a transparent black. So this is a transparent base mixed with your desired amount of reducer, and then just add drops of black until you're happy with the intensity of it. And the main reason that I like using a black mixed up in this sense is that it just gives you a little bit more control. You don't tend to kill a lot of the detail because the transparent base will extend the color a little bit and make it a little bit less opaque, so it's a little bit more forgiving when you're working with it. And then that way you can, the more you coat it, obviously you're still going to get that opacity. However, you've got a lot more control, so you're not just killing off all the hard work that you've done in the previous steps. So I always like using a black that is thinned out, or even if you've added, say, drops of blue or violet to it, whatever that may be, just to take that edge off the black. I just find straight black out of the bottle, it's just way too harsh. So you notice here that I'm varying my strokes from being up really close, nice and fine, to get some of that real fine, subtle detailing in amongst on the dragon skin there, just to get those imperfections in there. And then I'm coming back a little bit further and shading as well. Always being careful not to overdo it. So really take your time, especially when using this transparent black. It's just, yeah, take your time, don't rush it, and only add it in where you need it so that you don't just go over everything with this particular tone. Remember, the goal is to build a little bit more depth, but you don't want to just lose all of your detail. So you can see here I'm just further detailing all the scales on the dragon's body there. So just taking my time and hitting the lower section so to create my shadow, and leaving the top section virtually untouched, so that kind of creates my highlighted area. So you've got that gradation from the white highlight to the mid-tone blue to the lighter blue to the black at the base. So I do hope that you're enjoying this video so far. There's lots more to come, so be sure to check out the whole video until the end so that you can see the completed artwork, all finished, all done. If this is the first time to the channel, I'd love to have you as part of the community. Feel free to hit subscribe, tap on that bell icon, that'll notify you every time I put out new content. And for anyone that's interested in products that are used in this particular video, i.e. any of the airbrushes, the paints that I'm discussing, any of that sort of stuff at all, feel free to check out the description. I'm going to have some affiliate links in there for you, so it's nice and easy to find or purchase any of the products that you do see used in my videos. For those of you that have checked out parts 1 and 2, you may notice a slight difference between this video, and that is that you're not hearing the sound of the airbrush as I'm using it. I do apologize for that. I usually like to have that included in my videos and much prefer that than having lots of music put over things. I just find that it's a lot more helpful to hear that particular sound. The reason you're not hearing it in this video is because when I filmed all of this particular part, I had the background noise still running. Didn't think about it until I went to edit it all, so I do apologize for that. The next videos out of this series, I do hope that I haven't made that same mistake, but I do hope that you find this very helpful regardless, and that you get plenty of useful content out of it and information. So as you may or may not have already seen in the other parts of this video, I have been using this art tool Mike LaValle True Fire template a few times. So just to get some of my straight edges. So a lot of people think that these are only good for fire, but I always grab them. They've got great different shapes and bits and pieces that are really handy. So you can see here that I'm using certain edges of that to define some of my my real sharp edges that I want to create. This just stops you from having to go grab the paper templates, or mask up something with vinyl, or masking tape, that sort of thing. So I urge you to always have some freehand templates handy, and it just makes your artwork, it makes it so much easier to sharpen up some of your artwork. So keep that in mind. So just moving on to the wings now with that darker tone. And I'm just carefully rendering in some of those finer details, so the tears in the wings. I'm also going to add some texturing to the wing as well. So just gradually again building it up. You'll notice also that I just added a bit of a shadow on the scaly area of the dragon, so it's virtually a drop shadow of that wing sitting up on in front of the dragon's body. So to create that, just further away, and you can dust over it again very carefully so you don't oversaturate any areas. And just adding more detailing to the wings now, as well as some shading to give them a bit more depth. For anyone that's interested, the airbrush that I'm using right at this moment is the Iwata CMSB Micron. This runs a 0.18mm needle and it has a side cup. You probably noticed that from a lot of my later videos that I have been using this airbrush a lot more. I'm starting to really enjoy it even more than my CMC pluses. I just find that by having the cup to the side, out of my line of sight, just allows me to work a lot finer details without having to kind of stare over the top or around the gravity cup as I would normally need to if I was using say, the CS Eclipse or the CMC Plus or majority of the other airbrushes that have that larger cup in your line of sight. Okay, so now that most of the detailing is complete on the dragon, I'm going to start to work in some of the claws. I want to bring them back out, as well as the teeth. So some of this stuff has obviously got overspray on them. So I'm going to use my template, my vinyl masks, and I'm just going to mask up certain sections. You can see there I've cut a few little holes there for some teeth that I've missed or that were just lost whilst painting. And I'm also going to do all of the spikes coming out of the dragon's body, so I'm going to render all of them as well. So just going to apply strips of vinyl onto the areas that I want to airbrush, and I'm going to carefully cut those sections out and then render them. And as always, I do recommend putting an intercoat clear or something over your artwork when you are putting vinyl or any sort of masking materials back on top of your work. It's just going to save any issue with liftoff if you happen to just use something that's a little bit more aggressive and it lifts off your paint. You definitely don't want that to happen. So intercoat clear is always a good idea. I know that you can use some from Createx, or you can use the SG100, which is a House of Color intercoat clear, as well as a lot of brands have a specific colorless binder, so in the automotive paints that will work just fine. So just ask your local paint shop, or with whatever particular brand you are using, check out their range, because more often than not they already have one. If not, then they should be able to point you in the right direction to help you out. Okay, so you'll notice that I've already started spraying some of the teeth. The color that I'm using is Old Bone White. It's a Createx illustration color. It's out of the Bloodline range, so go check that out. It's a great color. So I'm using that as my base tone first. So I'm going to just carefully coat over all of my sections that I want to render as bone. You'll also notice that I'm not just smashing on the color, I'm just building it lightly. So from a distance, just carefully pulling back on that trigger, keeping the air on so it's drying in between, but I'm not flooding the surface. I don't want to risk sort of having any of the paint bleed underneath my template. I want to keep it nice and clean. So now that all that Old Bone White is complete, I'm switching to sand, and I'm just adding a bit of a shadow tone just to tint the Old Bone White color a little bit. So this sand color is mixed with reducer, and it's Trident airbrush paint. Okay, now that the Old Bone White's done, the sand is done, I'm moving on to sepia from Trident airbrush paint. And again, this is all mixed with reducer, as with all the colors that I'm explaining. And I'm just going to add a shadow to it, so to make these teeth and bone sections a bit more three-dimensional. Okay, so now that I've built all my shadows, what I want to do now is add some more detail and shading using transparent black. So I'm going to further render all of the bony sections as well as the teeth on all the exposed areas of the mask. And the final step now is to switch back to our original tone, which is the old bone white. And I'm just going to come back in and I'm going to highlight only one edge, just pick out real bright highlights again on the teeth and all of the bony sections. So now I'm just going to carefully remove the vinyl masking, and you'll see there that the bone and the teeth areas are nice and sharp and all completed with their shadows and highlights. But you'll notice as well that they look as though they're sitting on top of the surface now. So what I'm going to do is grab my transparent black and I'm going to blend them back into the skin of the dragon. So the way to do this is, you'll notice I'm just coming in with that transparent black at the base of those bony sections, and I'm just blending that back in to the skin of the dragon. So I'm going to use the same procedure now to render the dragon's claws. So I'm going to go in with my old bone white, create my flat tone, and then I'm going to proceed through the same steps as before using the sand, then the sepia, then the transparent black, then back to old bone white for highlights. So this will be a bit of a refresher. So I'm doing the claws as well as the two sort of sections on top of the dragon's wings. Okay, so now that that's all done, I've again applied a little bit more of the Intercoat Clear, or that colourless binder, just to protect the fresh areas of paint that we've just completed. And I'm now going back to my vinyl and I'm going to mask up the dragon yet again. This time I'm getting him prepared so that I can begin to work on the background of this particular artwork. So I'm going to start to render the clouds a little bit. Okay, so now that the dragon is completely masked up and protected, I'm using Payne's Grey and I'm just getting rid of some of the overspray that's been created from working on this artwork after the initial transfer. So by spraying the Payne's Grey back on there, it's just going to create a nice defined edge. Another little tip that you can try is whenever you're masking back over an artwork, you can come in, say, 1/2 mil onto the actual artwork, and then that way you're always going to get a crisp edge. You're never going to have that gap where you may miss it if you try to sort of mask completely accurately with it. So even around the claws of the dragon, I'm starting to put some of that Payne's Grey in there. I'm not too worried about it. Going on to some of my highlighted spots, that's just really my rough sketch that I did earlier with the white to sort of know where I was going with the design. So I'm going to further elaborate on that by adding shading and highlighting soon. So coming in now with my white, so this is Trident airbrush paint again, and this is thinned out to my liking. I'm just coming in using my Sagola X-Tech 100 and I'm pulling out some of the details of the clouds. So I don't necessarily want them really sharp because I want to create that sense of depth that the dragon is really in focus and right up close, and that you're sort of looking at the dragon and in the background there's these subtle clouds. So for that reason I'm not rendering them with sort of any sort of other templates. I'm just doing it freehand just to keep them a little bit softer. So now using my white, I'm just going to come in and highlight some of that rock as well as the skeletons left in the lair underneath the dragon. So I'm just doing this prior to coming in with my shadow tone. Okay, so I'm now switching to my transparent black again, and I'm going to further detail this whole layer underneath the dragons as well as the rock section. So you'll notice how tiny the skulls are as well as some of those bones. So you want to be up nice and close with the airbrush. Make sure that you've cleaned all the tip drying off and that it's flowing really nicely. If you need to, then I recommend having a little bit of paper next to you, just a bit of scrap paper that you can practice on. Practice your strokes before you do it on the actual artwork. So I'm using a real mixture of freehand airbrushing as well as the template that I grabbed a little bit earlier. So just play around with the effect that you're trying to go for. Try and use different paper templates or mylar templates to get the effect that you're looking for as well as your freehand techniques. Okay, so now I'm switching back to white and I'm going to start to really pull out some of these highlights on the rocks as well as the skeletons in the lair. Okay, so I'm going to carefully unmask the dragon now and check everything. You'll notice I've added some drop shadows as well, so once I remove the mask I can then better decide whether I'm happy with everything or if I need to come back in with a certain tone just to finish it off. So now that I had a better look at the dragons all unmasked, I just decided that I wanted to add a few more highlights and drool to the tongue and the mouth area of each dragon's head. So I'm going to go ahead and do that carefully now. Again, be very cautious now because you're at the sort of the final part of the design, so you don't want to stuff it up this sort of far into the artwork. So just take your time and just render it as accurately as possible. Just going to come in again with my transparent black and just clean up some of those drool areas, as well as fix up any areas under the claws there. So any bits that I think need a bit of extra shading, that's what I'm using this particular tone for. And just a final little touch, I'm just coming in with my real fine paintbrush and adding some extra detailing to the tongues, as well as highlighting, like applying a real bright white saliva highlight to some of that drool. It's a bit of a last minute decision. I thought I would add a little bit of violet to certain areas, so I'm just going ahead and doing that now, predominantly to the tongues of the dragons, just to further shade them. And here it is, the completed artwork. So here's a few pictures showcasing the art all done on the front fender of this particular custom motorcycle chopper. This artwork, as well as all the other paintings on this particular motorcycle, received a 2-pack glossy clear, and I hope that in the not too distant future I will have some images or video footage of the bike all put back together nice and shiny, so you can definitely check that out once I have that for you to view. So thanks again for watching. Until next time, go grab your airbrush, do some amazing artwork yourself, and we will see you again very, very soon. Bye for now.